Today on Unpacked.
This is a lifelong condition. It is not going anywhere. You need 40 hours of therapy a week. Who has that kind of money? I don't have that kind of money. How does that even work? I can't explain it. I can't tell you why he does it, but he does.
What is the hope for your children, in the next 10, 15, 20 years?
In a country where there is support from infancy all the way, anything is possible. Your child can be whatever they are if there is support.
One might think raising a set of twins is challenging, but raising a set of twins where one of them has special needs is even more challenging. And today's guest is going to share. Let's unpack. Kgomotso Moalusi is a single mother to 9-year-old twin boys. While twins are known for their spitting image, Kgomotso soon learned about a distinct difference between her sons when one of her sons was diagnosed with autism. She takes us through her journey as the parent of an autistic child. This is her story. Let's unpack. Kgomotso, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So now, speak to me about autism and what your understanding of autism is, especially for the viewers to get an understanding.
Okay, prior to my sons having autism, my closest thing with autism had been seeing Rain Man.
Yes.
With Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman a long time ago. Since then, the journey has changed a bit, of course. Now I can tell you technically, autism is a neurological condition. And in essence, it's almost like a communication disability because there is communication in the brain, but it doesn't quite, like the processing happens differently.
Yes.
And then it doesn't translate quite as easily to the body. Now, how do you see this? You see it mostly, as your kids grow older and they're supposed to be communicating or socializing, then you see that, they like to actually be separate from other people. There are things that are too much, like lights or sound.
That's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And of course, as you learn about it now, looking back, you actually realize, okay, then also when we were young, and if you can imagine a child who hardly sleeps or goes around the bed the whole night, they call it sleep migration. That's also an early sign of autism. But being in South Africa, in most countries, they were diagnosed between 6 months and 18 months. I got my diagnosis my kids were about 4 already.
Wow.
So, and of course, at that time, I'm going, it's like, no, it's twins, they're slow. Give a west. So don't rush the milestones, because everything else, up until the communication milestones, was hitting the mark and was happening as it should be. It's only there where, we started going, you could see, is it a tantrum? Is it a meltdown? So they get sensory overload, and it could be from any of the 5 senses. So you could be at a pool party and nobody understands. So why are they naked? And then you get that it's the texture. The texture could be problematic. The smells could be problematic. The sounds, the light. So it's multifaceted, and I think the biggest frustration is if you had to sit with 4 autistic kids here, you would not necessarily have the same signs.
Yes.
So I think that also is what complicates diagnosis and even how it is that you can deal with it or that you can easily identify.
And I think I just want to get clarity that, is it definitive that both your sons are autistic or only one of them?
Okay. One, I have a definite diagnosis. The other one, I'm going on another round of assessment. The twins are 9 at the moment. And why that happens, remember, twins tend to mimic each other.
Yes.
So I've actually had to learn to each one to have their own doctors and separate, so that, I have somebody who is seen as. So my other son, Lesedi, we've gone, no, he's not ADHD. No, so we're still doing assessment on that. With what I've learned of autism, I think he is, because autism is a spectrum.
Yes.
So I think he's a bit more high functioning, but I definitely think it's autism.
Yes.
And I've seen also when I changed schools and got them in the same space, that even his learning gets better.
Yes.
Yeah, the big difference between them is Letabo is non-speaking.
Yes.
And then Lesedi, his speech was also delayed, but he definitely can communicate in the
Yes.
way that you say communicate. But of course, even as a non-speaking, there's a lot that Letabo does communicate. And I think that is what a lot of us as parents struggle with understanding that not speaking is not communicating.
Yeah. It's just the one form of communication that we are familiar with and that is common. But obviously, in scenarios like yours, there are other forms of communication you're going to have to acknowledge and learn.
You're going to have to learn. And
Yeah.
you're going to have to learn that by observing and knowing your child.
Yes.
Because there could be makaton, there could be signs, there could be pictures, and it doesn't work. I mean, my son generally points at what he wants. And I mean, we're 9 years into this journey, so you kind of know.
Yes.
Like other people in the shop, I'm sure, would be very surprised when you're with a child and you're like, stop it. And they're like, no, but he didn't say anything. I'm like, he did. You don't know what he was about to do.
Yes.
So I need to nip that in the bud. But I think one thing I will say I've appreciated on this journey is it has forced me as a parent to be a lot more aware, a lot more involved, and a lot more intentional. Because when you don't have the usual forms of communication, speaking, you then have to observe and understand that, okay, that is about to bug him. Like, he's tapping his foot or flapping his hands or hands over his ears. Then I already know that, okay, there's a problem. But then before that, now you must see, before he did that, what happened?
Yes.
So that you can understand what the triggers are, because they could be anything. He could be triggered by somebody there in the back being on their phone, which me and you do not hear.
Yes.
But
but he is hearing it and it's bothering him.
Yes, and I'll give you a simple one that it took me a while to get. A lot of us struggle with going to the mall or other spaces with your child, and you don't understand why. And then when you do a sensory audit of the space, I never understood that fluorescent lights are actually extremely loud. But because with him, it's not just the light, it's the sound of it as well. And it's like, it's one thing that sticks out and keeps niggling.
Yes.
But I mean, you obviously then cannot stop going to all spaces. You just need to learn to manage spaces that if there's the light and then there's the crowd of people and then there's a sound. So you need to separate things. And
you wouldn't go to the mall month end when you know it's busy.
Darling, I wouldn't go to Mainland anyway.
Yes.
I don't have those many kgs to lose, but you wouldn't go to a busy place. So I would go, I'm a Pretoria girl, I would go to the Grove or an open space, because I found where there's less people, he's a lot calmer. And he's calmer because he's processing less information. So then we are able to do that. We would go when the shops open because there are less people. And that's the important thing. You have to keep going and doing those normal things, because you can't keep your child locked up. And you also, to help him understand and be able to be in those spaces, you need to keep trying them, but just managing the space a bit.
And also just learning coping mechanisms, because mom is not always going to be there to protect him.
Definitely. And that's it. And I love when you say that, because my whole approach with even talking about the autism is, we live in a space where when you have a child with special needs, we're all about helping them live in the world, which is very necessary. But we must also then do the added responsibility of preparing the rest of the space to accommodate. And it's very difficult as a mom, because you feel you must have all the answers, right?
Yes.
And in this space, we are not speaking, and you want to control everything around it, but every once in a while, you gotta, you gotta let him be in some spaces that make him a little bit uncomfortable, etc. Because you cannot always be there. And for purposes of growing up, it is going to be expected of him at some point to be in these spaces and to function in these ways.
I mean, I'm just thinking, if we are to look back at, your pregnancy and things like autism are quite new. We're not that familiar with it. And your GP or I'm assuming a pediatrician wouldn't necessarily be able to just pick it up immediately. when in your case, and why was it so late? What are those signs and symptoms that you're like, something is off? What was it for you, and when was that taking place?
Okay, I'm going to go back to your earlier question around the pregnancy. I honestly cannot say anything around that seemed amiss. It was my first pregnancy. I was 31.
Everything is amiss in your first pregnancy. Everything is amiss.
You are just going with the flow, right? And then, of course, then now it's twins. And I mean, I already going in, I knew routine would be very, very necessary. And I would say, yeah, I think the amiss part started there as they get older, where they are supposed to be, let's say, mimicking what I'm doing.
Yes.
Or being in a space. Because at first, for many parents, it comes to us there where you're supposed to be around other people. Then it's like, why are they getting and initially, Shem, you also get very frustrated to be like, I'm not for this mess with you today. But then you start seeing that this is not naughtiness coming from your child. They are really stressed in the space, right?
You know what's breaking my heart about what you're saying right now is the many, brown and black and all races of children who are just accused of ostotu and got punished when there was something wrong with them that was not noticed. Like, that just breaks my heart thinking about that. It really breaks my heart thinking about that.
Yeah, we're going to the emotions early, right? But yeah, it is very sad. And I loved what you said earlier, that acknowledgement that this is, I won't say a fairly new, but there is no conclusive evidence around autism. Because here's one thing people need to get, and parents, and I will say us as Black parents as well, this is a lifelong condition. It is not going anywhere. Anything that you do, medication, therapy, all of them are to manage the condition. None of them are to cure. And that is so necessary to say, because so many parents then get trapped in paying gazillions of rands in the most expensive school because this is going to go away, or drinking stuff. And it's not even an African thing or even a South African thing. I mean, in some spaces, I mean, there was some guy in the US who had almost a battery acid type of thing that people thought that this would cure, right?
Yes.
So their brains are working differently. And we need to find a way to make the space workable for them, or to also teach them to cope. Actually, you do that on a parallel basis.
Because it's almost, if I think of it, it's almost like, and I'm glad you said differently, and many people might say abnormal. The thing is, a person, they are experiencing the world differently to how we experience it. So us sitting in this room with lights, with cameras facing us, is not agitating us other than just normal nerves of being in front of camera. But for somebody with autism, there are things they're going to notice, feel, experience. There's heat from candles, there's lights, there's sounds that will be overwhelming for them. So I almost feel like the world is not yet ready because it's not prepared for a person who's autistic. So now, in the same way that you are saying, yes, I'm preparing my child for the world needs to change to accommodate. It's only recently on certain TV shows that before they do flashing cameras, they put a warning sign to say, for those that have photosensitivities or epilepsy.
Yeah.
It's only now that the world is accommodating that, as opposed to us just considering on the norm that, listen, certain things are going to be overwhelming for certain people. I suffer from trypophobia, which is just a fear of lots of little holes. And the moment it comes up on screen, my skin thrills. It doesn't disable me in any way where I can't move or can't do anything. But there are individuals who suffer many things that the world is not yet prepared for. So if I understand it correctly, they just experience the world differently, and they need to operate differently.
They experience the world differently. And that naughtiness, that misbehavior thing is actually such a huge problem, because remember, parents with children who are autistic, it doesn't happen the same. I mean, I am in a mommy group, and somebody had their child speaking until 4, and then they just stopped. And then what is that? Oh, you get girls. Girls are actually more prone to being diagnosed extremely late. I mean, I was at a foundation launch the other day, and there was a lady who got diagnosed at age 40. You know,
What?
because what people
Wow.
don't get is some things are obvious and others are not. And I
Yeah.
will use an example with respect, totally. Down syndrome is a chromosome 21 thing.
Yes.
Most people with Down syndrome present in a certain way,
Yes.
and therefore you can see it. Autism does not. If
Yes.
Letaba and Lesedi walked in here, apart from them being twins and confusing even to us mothers sometimes,
Yes.
there would be nothing else that you would see. It would be in sitting that you would see him getting agitated or wanting to be in an open space. So you can't see it. And I think what happens with a lot of parents is you are experiencing this thing and you can't explain it to other people quite clearly. And then they don't get
Because it doesn't
as well.
present itself. It's not something that is physically visible.
Yes.
And it's not something that everybody is familiar with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even with your specialist, because I have learned now, and now I'm at that point that if I'm going to go to an occupational therapist, I need to ensure that they have an interest in autism, because if they don't, then we're not really moving.
Yeah.
So you're going to get to your pediatrician. They will send you to because diagnosis is done by a pediatric neurologist.
Yes.
Right. But then other people tell you, no, but I got the speech therapy. And yes, they can see the signs. But sometimes it's also in somebody with having a specific interest. In my case, when I had my kids, my dad had been a doctor for 35 years. And even he was thrown a bit because he was like, listen, I'm not there. You understand?
Yes,
so, and as a parent, that's it. It's one of those things that you can't go on your full shock therapy, because you also then need to make certain choices to be like, okay, this person understands, this person doesn't understand. So for the longest time, I would drive either from Welkom to Potchefstroom or from Pretoria to Potchefstroom, because there was a pediatric psychiatrist who with her we can work more, because that is her interest, that is what she's studying, and therefore she's more prone to be able to assist me. Whereas other people, and then the sad thing, our relationship with doctors, you have people who will not say to you, I actually don't know. Or I'm struggling. You'll be going there to the speech therapist, or a quarter, 2 quarters, like we are not moving. Do we know what we're doing? So with a lot of things, you need to bring them and align them. Even when you get schooling, align it to your doctors. And so there's a lot of facilitating that you need to do to ensure that you're on the best individualized plan for your child to cope within your space.
And I think the difficulty is the fact that as they grow up, I mean, they're 9 years old now, they still have life milestones that they need to deal with, like puberty is going to be now it's almost like starting from scratch. Is that how pubic hair, is that how you would describe it?
It is, because, and also what happens, and I love when you bring up puberty, because especially with girl children, a lot of parents only then realize that autism could be one of them, because our children, how they experience things, whether it's a cut or what, it's different from us, right? So the majority of us, puberty came with huge changes. Even with me, I don't want to lie, I am sitting scared, because we have just gotten into the rhythm of where we are. What is going to happen as we go on to the next level? Because puberty is not even just the physical stuff. It is the emotional stuff.
And
the hormonal stuff. And also, in which spaces do you go? Because our children cannot read social cues. So
and please explain what you mean by that, because
I want to give you
the assumption is that we know what that means.
So in speaking, you would be talking about it raining cats and dogs. And many autistic people would literally look outside and think, but they're not cats and dogs raining. So what are you talking? So sarcasm and humor and those things are not easily understood.
Identifiable,
But on another thing, as a parent, it could take me a while to teach my child, well, this is your niece, this baby's your niece, meet the baby, wada. Now imagine this on a 15 or 14-year-old who then, when we're in the shopping center, does not understand that baby is not our baby. So you actually cannot touch that baby. I'll give you a last example and about how we learn lessons. So for the longest time, it would be such a struggle to go into restaurants, because the table walks in and there's a drink. So what if it's on somebody else's table? I want an ice cube. I'm going to stick my hand in. And as a parent, I mean,
you're
people
mortified.
mad at you. You're mortified. But we then cannot stop going to Spur. So
Yes.
what we do now is I call when I leave home to say, hi, Spur, I'm on my way. Please get our order ready.
Yes.
Then, because in his mind, it's taking a while to understand, this is Spur, this is what we're going to eat. So when you get there, let's have the food. Then he can settle with everything else. So with other people, like, people don't get that. And then you get parents who are forgetting that, there are spaces that we can't go. I can't necessarily take my son to a wedding where there's going to be lots of noise, lots of people, lots of different foods, because it's going to be too much for him. It's going to be too much for me. And let's tell the truth as parents. Sometimes when you're in those situations, you also get frustrated and your energies go off. So there are things, and
then no one's having a good time.
Church. Lesedi loves the order of church. Letaba cannot. And I understand, because the acoustics, then the sound, then the essence, then it's a lot. He just wants to be outside. But instead of not going to church, rather speak to my church to be like, okay, do you have a quieter room, or can we sit towards the back so that if he needs to go out, he can go out? But that doesn't necessarily always happen easily. And that's a struggle we as parents then need to take on for ourselves and explain. Don't take it for granted that people are just nasty.
Yes.
In the same way we didn't understand this condition, a lot of people don't understand it.
Yeah.
So we gotta, put your feelings, your soft feelings aside and do the work of advocating for your child and helping the space where it can happen.
And I'm just thinking about what you said about the social cues and us giving examples, but also what society deems as normal appropriateness. Do you have any examples of that? Because I'm seeing you.
I have a 9-year-old boy that I could randomly give him a paper, whatever, because that's what he needs.
Yeah.
And everybody else is like, oh no, man, why it's so? But you have to just get to that level where you do that. But when we're talking about...
Is it because it's soothing and comforting for him?
It's soothing and comforting for him.
Yes.
I had a lady the other day in the shop said, oh, like he's, and I'm like, no, but it calms him, because then I'd be patting on his back or rubbing him a bit so that he gets that, okay, we're waiting, we're gonna pay, we're gonna go. Because we are ready to call the brass band when we can get through grocery shopping. It's like such a huge milestone because there were so many possible triggers, and you just try to get through the moment.
Yes.
So,
and the tills going off and the beeping and the,
so when
customers'
I go grocery
noise
shopping,
and everything.
I start on the breads or the fruits. Then he can either grab an apple or grab a roll. Then I know he's sorted. Then I do what I need to do as fast as I can so that we can get out. But those are things that you learn by observing. So if I had chosen, and I did at the beginning, I think, then you think, oh Lord, let me rather send somebody to do things for me.
Yes.
But we need to get out and
prepare them for the world.
Prepare. And when you engage with other mothers, it actually makes it a lot easier. If I could give you a last example on things that are expected by society. Kids are potty trained by 2 or 3 on our journey. And that's where you get how communication is beyond speaking. Now, if you're somebody that you cannot speak to and you're not, how are you going to teach something like potty training? Because that's how you end up with kids 13, 14, still not. And of course, in society, that is a big problem. Well, it's a big problem for you also as a parent, because how do you do this? What quality of life are we having here? I think Letabo, we got fully potty trained at about 7. And it's a struggle. But the main thing is routines are what get you through. Routines and our kids need a lot of predictability. So we don't just up and go.
And structure. And planning. But also I was just thinking about what you say. The difficulty with that situation is when you are a new mom, usually if people around you say, no, it's us all. Now no one around you knows, so how are we dealing?
Yes, because as I'm sure you're learning, like the Olympics that is parenting, nobody tells you the rules. Like, everybody's like, why is that?
None of us know what we're doing. That's
and with this one, don't forget the other part that comes here. It's like, okay, Marwena Wente, like, why am I aliso? My another friend's like, oh, Mkanam, your child, and you're like, he's actually not naughty, and there's nothing wrong with my parenting. He just needs certain things that help him. Parents will see kids when you buy a toy, a car, and all he's interested in is the wheel or the box. And so you start seeing it in things like that attachment to certain things that doesn't make sense, the alignment of things on the floor. I used to feel so spooky. I'd get into a room and let's have this thing of opening all the cupboards. And you always be like, okay, well, why are all the cupboards open when I walk into a room? But for him, that's it. He walks in, opens, and then he goes. I can't explain it. I can't tell you why he does it, but he does. And now we work around that.
So what are some of the myths, misconceptions that people have about autism in general, but also about your parenting and your children?
The one, autism is not well known, but the one that, and when you say it, people are like, I don't know why you're offended. A lot of people hit you with autistic, oh my God, he's a genius. And yes, it's true. I mean, for me, my kids were going to be geniuses because they're my kids.
Yes.
Anyway, right?
Yes.
But, and they'll give you examples. I mean, have you seen The Good Doctor? Have you? And you're like, yes, in a country where there is support from infancy all the way, anything is possible. Your child can be whatever they are if there is support. Unfortunately, here, unless I am raking in mega bucks, it's never going to happen, right? No. We have a public schooling system, but I mean, in some spaces, disability is just disability altogether. There's no differentiation between cerebral palsy and Down syndrome. And all of these kids with all of their disabilities so have specific needs that would speak to them and help them get taught. And that is not always possible. But the last one on the genius and the explaining, yes, it could happen. I could have a child who could tell you all the maths formulas in the world, but we still struggle with brushing teeth every day. It's a painful exercise. Most of our kids, we can't go and, you learn new ways to cut hair. For a moment, I was using no hair because he didn't want the buzzer around his ear. And this happens for a lot of our families. I had a mom the other day who was saying, Kgomotso, how do we get over, the child is growing now and he still can't tie his shoelaces. So it's the basic everyday things that fall apart. That
everyone takes for granted.
Yes.
Because by a certain age, the assumption is if you see a 5-year-old, you know that they're already doing certain things on their own, independently.
And if you see him doing something, let's say better, like you get the stories and a child is playing the piano and they're amazing. Yes, but chances are if you go to their mother, everyday living is also problematic. You could be having, some are also very picky eaters, right? So you'd have somebody who just wants dry food. So as you're serving, things must be separate. Or somebody will tell you, I just want green food. So you'd be, and when we sit as mommies and support groups and you discuss some of the things that you go through, or you get a child who is non-speaking, but will sing along to a song and quite well, So those things, even in your mind, it gets confusing and it gets heartbreaking because as a mom, I want simple things. I want my child to say, Mama, that's what I want.
Is it, okay, I think now I understand why it's offensive or you feel offended because, or let me ask, does it make it feel like certain things are invalidated? Because if somebody says, oh, they're a genius, which, as you said, they very well could be. They could become the next Mozart. But it almost, because that genius is there, it almost deletes the experience, the painful realities that you face every day.
Yes and no. I think as I'm growing in this, and the acceptance journey here is sometimes a moving target. Yes and no. I think I've gotten to a point where I understand that people are not being offensive. They're trying to give you a comfort, don't worry, at least.
Yeah.
And that's where they're coming from. And because they don't know, because how do I support you? So I don't get offended. I do wish, though, and I do take time then to give you another part of the experience. And then just on your last term, it's not necessarily painful. For me, Letabo and let's say, they are the only kids I've ever had. They're the only kids I know. So if you had to say, Kgomotso, what is life without autism? I don't know. I don't know if somebody had to give me a magic pill if I would take it because this is the child I know. This is the child I love. I just struggle with certain things. I struggle with the fact that I have to drive 45 kilometers to take my kids to school. Just one way. I struggle with having medical aid paying at almost the highest level, yet they don't pay half of the therapies. That by March, I mean, they would say to you on autism in countries where there's actually proper service system, you need 40 hours of therapy a week. Who has that kind of money? I don't have that kind of money. How does that even work?
Yeah.
Because, so it almost, the painful part for me is what I have termed the penalty. If there's going to be a school driver, there needs to be an assistant. If you're going to try and be in another school that is trying inclusivity, you must still pay for that. So there's always added costs and extreme added costs to almost everything you have to do. Like right now, I'm wondering, at some point, I'm going to have to go get them an ID. That time is not going to stand at Home Affairs. Like, it's not going to happen. Because he can't stand that still. And even sometimes when you go to the hospital, when you say, I'm coming in with he had broken his arm, I'm coming in with my child, and you try to be proactive to say, he's autistic, so he can't stand still for a long time. Can we come in and go? Somebody will still make you wait 2-3 hours. And the child is irritating other people, and he's moving up and down, and he's irritable, and he's having a meltdown. So all of those things change the dynamics of anything you're supposed to do. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it. And then just maybe a last one that I wish people, one of the things I experience with autism is the lack of sleep. So we can go a whole night, like especially if you don't have routine. There are nights where you get by on like 2 hours sleep because, he's moving around, he's jumping around, and you.
And does he need you? Does he need you to be there with him, or he's not yet at a place where you can leave him because he'll eventually go to bed?
Luckily for us, we're at a point where I can leave him. Like, he gets by in the dark, he'll go to me, he'll go to the nanny, he'll go to his brother. But for purposes of everybody else, you actually have to keep him with you. So you need to be aware because I'm very happy. Now we have huge milestones. Like, he knows what food he wants and he will go get what he wants. But I can't also then just say, okay, I'll sleep. What if he starts frying things, So you still need to be aware and monitoring and just make sure he's safe. Or before, he used to grind his teeth. And that sound that goes on and on the whole night, or he'll be humming right next. There's no sleep that's going to happen in that kind of space. But in the morning, I still need to pitch up at work. I still need to put in 8 hours because nobody gets that part.
And I think it's so difficult. Like, everybody meets me, they know I have a newborn, they expect me to be tired, they expect me to be underslept, they expect me to still be in pain. Whereas in your case, saying I had a hard night, people would have to have intimate knowledge of your day-to-day life for them to understand and sympathize and accommodate you.
Very true.
Oh, it sounds hectic. But there's something, I don't know, I just get a sense that you are so equipped for this. Even if you don't feel it, I just get the sense that your children chose you for a reason.
I'm going to say a loud yes to that one. It took me a while to get there. I don't want to lie. My kids actually went to go live with my dad for a bit. I struggled with this for a bit. But it is true. And I think I am on this journey, and now I am happy to be on this journey because I am somebody who believes in a bit of disruption. Sometimes the system needs to be shaken up. And you need to do things different. I'm a giver. I'm a very generous person. And what I've found is people expect you to pitch up for you and they don't pitch up back for you, right? But you gotta change that. You gotta be able to say, this is what I require. So now I've learned to do that. And I have found that had me shameful before to be like, oh Lord, now they're gonna judge me, is actually freeing.
Yeah.
Literally, you will not believe how receptive people are when you approach them. Whether it be your local supermarket, whether it be somebody to say, listen, I'm going to come with my child. This is what is happening. They are incredibly receptive. And over the past 2-3 years, that has actually been my high. To actually realize that, yes, and I say this to my fellow parents, we can sit and we can complain how everybody's against us, but we got to remember, a Minister of Education, they're not living this. So we got to tell them, we got to document our journey. We got to tell them to be like, the change you need to do is this. How do we know it's this? Because we are doing it. So we've seen that this actually works. And so in that way, I think I'm I'm quite equipped, and I think some higher power just thought, all this energy, I'm going to give it a job, and now it has a job
and a purpose.
Direction, and it's been an incredible experience. Like,
can I ask? Obviously, the conversations we're having are quite middle class perspective.
Yes.
If you didn't have money, or maybe you've even connected with the mothers who are using public hospitals, public institutions for assistance, I mean, what does that world look like for the parents of children with autism?
I don't think any of us really, really have money. Like, my kids are now back in public school because I'm owing everybody and their mother. Because when you're paying, and our schools go anything from 3,500 to 17,000 a month. It's ridiculous. Nobody can keep up. And if you speak to a lot of autism parents, sometimes what you pay for your child is even higher than your bond, or it's your next highest payment after that, right? The system, and that's where I talk about the disruption. And that's where you want people to understand that it is necessary to open up. I mean, the other day, there was a child in Stormfall near Queenswood who got bumped down, 10 years old. This boy walked from Mamelodi East and got bumped there. The police struggled with him because he couldn't speak. So we had one of our parents there to try and assist until we can get a mother. And we got the mother. The child is 10. And she's saying, "What's Kgomotso? I didn't know what to do with the child. We're just keeping the child at home." And you ask her, "But ma'am, the child got bumped in the afternoon. Why are you here now?" She goes, and you know what? You can't judge her because she doesn't know. Because when you're at a low, there was a story actually in the paper a few years ago of a lady in Diepsloot who had tied down her child. And everybody was big on judging her. The reality is, what else are you supposed to do when, if you get a social grant and your child throws stones and breaks people's windows, those people want money. I have mothers in my group who have to use their grant to pay off the damage their children have done first, before you think about food. So for me, I wish the system could be a bit more open. If you're going to have an independent school, can you cater for other children? But mostly our government also needs to up its game. Like, we need to deliver and deliver fast. And for all of us, in all spaces. I had a lady who's living in Pierre van Ryneveld. We go to government, we try and get her school. They're giving her a school in Soshanguve. What is she supposed to do? Is she supposed to drive all the way there and then get to her job? So the system is really not inclusive. And for me, I have found the term inclusive as a bit of a crock, sorry for my language, because inclusive is we have a special education needs school. That is inclusive. Inclusive is not, okay, we have these children, it doesn't come to the curriculum.
Yeah.
So if you come to an Elson school, our kids are doing woodwork and needlework. Those digital things, they are not there for us. Although I know I have a child who can dismantle my phone and put it back together again. So if the system is not even given that, so now we have the numbers. There are more classes. I think Pretoria is one of the better cities of public schools where they are now doing autism classes. But even there, it is not adequate. Some of the teachers are not adequately trained. The resources are not enough. So it's hard. And I think, like I said, it's one of those things where, yes, you're going to ask for help, but it's for us as parents to, as we push for what we need for our kids, to remember that the same way that autism is a spectrum, the reality of people who are going through this journey is a spectrum as well. There are those who are at the top end, and there are those at the bottom end. And whatever changes we're trying to make, let's try and accommodate as many people as possible. And that's what I do. I do community radio and go to communities and go and talk. And you would be surprised. I have not gone anywhere where I didn't meet somebody in the community who says, "You know what? I don't want no child." And we didn't understand that this is what it was.
But now that you're saying, we're connecting the dots.
Yes.
And I think it's so difficult where if you are at the place you are where you can even articulate everything and you're still facing challenges, what for the people who are not even at a space of knowing what it is. The fact that you need to explain autism, ka Setswana, ka Zulu, ka Xhosa, just something as basic as being able to explain to somebody in their mother tongue what it is so they know what it is, and then for them to be able to get help in their communities, in their areas. I think we obviously are facing a lot of problems and challenges. But just to wrap up, and, I will obviously get viewers to direct any questions because there's so many questions that I have that we won't get to. Where do you see, or let me say, what is the hope for your children, in the next 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, I hope they stay healthy for now. But I am hoping that with the work that I do, with the work that other mothers groups, because one thing that has been very exciting in the past little while is there are a lot of formations and people are responding to different things, There's some who are doing door-to-door and others who work in education. I'm hoping with all of us biting at this elephant, we can bring it down that it is understood that there are conditions like this. And in our response to it, there's no one size fits all. So my hope is, as we talk more, people will understand more. They will show a bit more kindness and be just a bit more patient with parents to understand that this is not an easy journey, but it is a journey that affects a lot of us, And I think for me, I'm hoping in the next 10 years or so that autism is also not a conversation that we're still just having with education and health and social development sector. I'm hoping we get onto transport and other spaces because my child is not about just admission into a school. There's still a whole quality of life. We still need to travel and get into airplanes, and they need to know what that space is. We need to get into a mall where perhaps we can talk about having, like in some countries, they have like autism hours or whatever, where the sounds are taken down a little bit so that the space is more inclusive. If we can have like a corner, even at one table in one restaurant where they make sure that the space is accommodative to people of different needs, I know, COVID has had everybody very stressed. But there's some benefits in it that I liked.
I was going to say, have there not been benefits just in terms of now that people are isolating, there's a ripple effect that for you and your kids' lives is a benefit?
For me, it is. Because it forced you, as a parent, there are things that we struggle to accept or understand in our children. And what happens on this journey, and I'll go back to being able to afford some of the things that you want. Sometimes when you're going through a journey like this that's not easily understood, you are subcontracting everything. So I'm dropping them off at school, I'm dropping them off at horse riding. COVID shut you down with your kids. You had nowhere else to go. So whatever it is in a family setup that anybody was not understanding or accepting about autism, you had no choice because we had to be together and all of us understanding that, okay, this is what he is, this is what he requires. But also as a parent to say, instead of sitting back and thinking, Kisa Wanako Skolon said they are not doing this. Now you have sat and you've actually looked at like, my child actually can do this, but they struggle with that.
Yes.
And being able to, and I think for me coming out of it, my energy is better aligned. And I'm a very big believer that children follow our energies. If you are calmer, mirrors. Yes, if you are calmer about the situation, even his struggle, they tend to be calmer as well. But if you are tense because you're like, I don't know what this condition is and then they also shut down because they're reading off from your energy how you are. And I think if we could do that, like be on the front line of it and try to get ways for our children to be able to communicate for themselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's drawing, try and facilitate that such spaces exist. That for me would be.
Final words to the viewers at home. What would you like them to know?
I call my boys my awesome misters. I call them awesome before the autism even. But I think for me, a simple one is please try to understand somebody else's journey and just try to be understanding. Just, I don't want big changes. I just want people to be patient and understand that this is something that exists and it exists in our communities, and reach out. Just because a mother or a father, they're not reaching out to you, please just reach out back because we really need that. But from parents' side, please talk to each other, get support somewhere. So, and sometimes support will not come from where you think it needs to come from, but do that for yourself and your child. Because the minute your acceptance is located, your child, everything else with your child is easier. You know, acceptance starts with us. And if we get that right, everything else works.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I absolutely respect the work that you're doing, that you're not just seeing this as a private struggle and only trying to solve your own personal challenges and your children's challenges, but you're trying to advocate for other people's children who may not have a voice, who may not have the platform, who may not have the information, the resources. Please keep doing what you're doing, and I really appreciate you sharing the story, and I wish your sons all of the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kgomotso.
No problem.
Hashtag Unpacked with Relebogile. I think the biggest takeaway for me is really let's be kinder to one another. We forget that we do not know the struggles and battles that people are facing, but also the information is there. Go and find out about it. Don't wait until you are dealing with it directly in your own life to find out about it. Hence, we have this show where we unpack different issues, different situations, different personal journeys that people are going through. Thank you so much for joining us. Engage on the socials. Hashtag Unpacked with Relebogile. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked.
There are terms and conditions of being a side chick.
Was there ever a part of you that was like, when are you leaving your wife?
Your husband or your partner needs a stress reliever. So I'm the stress reliever.
Does every man cheat? Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. New episodes weekdays at 5:30 p.m. on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Television edited broadcasts weekdays at 5 p.m. Open up to S3.